thanks for watching this week. I am back in my favorite cozy table with all of my little things in my corner, which I love. I sit here and I pray and I enjoy doing my Bible studies here. So I'm also bringing you today here and back here. And I'm doing a little redecorating around because fall is coming and I'm really excited to decorate for the fall, even though I don't celebrate Halloween, but I do like to change up for the seasons a little bit in my house. So I'm super excited this week because if you remember last week in chapter 9, when I talked to you about a troll that came after me to tell me that Mark was a doctor, pretending, letting me know that Mark was disciple. Well, Mark was not a disciple, and we're going to get to it right now, very early on in this chapter. So if you're just sticking around for that part, stay tuned because you're going to find out who the disciples were, and that people have been lying to you or they haven't been studying their Bibles if they don't know what I'm about to show you and show you the evidence of all of this. So let's get into chapter 10 today, verse number 1 of Mathew. And you're going to notice a lot of the things during the past few weeks some people have been bringing to my attention that are things that are kind of happening here. Like, for instance, with the killing of the babies in Hira, that to me and to some other people, that brought them memories of abortion. And then the part where we read about the leper, also the separation of the leper, where they had to live in a separate community and they couldn't come and they couldn't eat with the other people and they had to be distant. And that also brings us memory of what they're trying to do also with the unvaccinated people. So you will see that just like Ecclesiastes says, nothing new is under the sun. That's exactly what's going on here, only in different variations of it, but it's pretty much the same stuff. So anyway, verse number 1 in Matthew chapter 10 reads, "And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits, to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease." So I want you to notice here that Jesus called his 12 disciples. He didn't force them. He didn't ask them to volunteer. He just went and he said, "Follow me." And they picked up their bag and whatever they had with them, and they just followed him. They knew that that was what they had to do. And that's exactly what we should do when Jesus calls us. Even though we might be unsure, we can take baby steps in that direction. So the next verse that I wanted to talk to you here is now the part about the 12 disciples. So let's talk about this 12 disciples. Okay. Now these 12 disciples were a diverse group of men, and they all had variety of different backgrounds and life experiences, and none of them were privileged, notice, or they had high status. None of them. So you're not going to see the doctrine here, are you? Okay. So let's go to read Corinthians 1:26 to 29. Actually, it's 1 Corinthians. We're going to go to chapter 1, verse 26, 29. Let's read those. It says, "For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And base things of the world and things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are." 29, "That no flesh should glory in his presence." This reminds me of something that God gave me privately last year, which he says to me. He said, "You are going to live in a world of contradictions where whatever seems right is really not. But to the rest of the world who doesn't have this Holy Spirit to see, they're not going to take notice of that. So hopefully you will all come to Jesus so that you will also be able to see those contradictions in the world." All right, let's move on. Notice here that it says here, God gave them power. So God gave the power to these men who were, to them, they were like nobodies, right? They were just fishermen. But God gives the power. He's going to equip you on your journey with him. Along the way, he is going to equip you. Don't ask any questions. Don't say, "Oh, well, I don't have this. I don't know my Bible. I I think I need 3 years to read the Bible before I can do anything in ministry. No, God says, walk with me. Jesus says, walk with me. I'm going to equip you on the way. I'm going to teach you on the way. And we're going to see that coming up. Verse number 2, now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James, the son of Zebediah, and John his brother. 3, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Mathew, the publican, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus. 4, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. So let's talk a little bit about here, because this is the part that you guys are probably waiting for. This is the first time, from my notes I wrote, that these 12 were called apostles in the book of Matthew, which means one who was sent out. They were being sent out by Jesus. They were ready to go out and do the ministry. It wasn't that they were there to make a religion. They were there to just tell the people about the truth, the simple things that Jesus wanted people to learn. So this word here, apostles, in our everyday life, it could mean an envoy or an ambassador, or it could be simply a messenger. There's a couple of verses here that you can go to, which is John 13:16 and Hebrews 3:1, where it takes mention of this there. If you want to go ahead and read that. We won't do that today because we're probably going to go over today. The reason there was 12 apostles is because it's a representation of the 12 tribes of Israel back in the day. So the disciples, the apostles, were known as the disciples because they were taught by Jesus. That's what they were. They were disciples. They were learning, and they had their time when they were learning. But now, as apostles, they were being sent out to the world to spread the good news, the message of Christ. The message of repentance is what it is. So the list of the 12 doesn't give us many details. And Jesus basically chose common people. He chose them whether they were rich or poor. He chose common people. He chose uneducated people. It really didn't matter to him. So some people today have this mentality that only certain people are fit to follow Christ or to even teach the word of God. But that hasn't been the plan of Jesus. When Jesus calls you to do something, that's all you have to do. He will equip you with, and you'll see more about that coming up. So basically, God can use anybody, no matter how insignificant you think that person is, or that it appears to the world. So if you're the kind of person who has been called by God, but you feel like you're worthless or you are useless to God, remember that God can take ordinary people and he can do amazing things. So make sure that you remember that, because you definitely do not want to be rebellious against God. So just so you know here, this name Bartholomew was another name for Nathaniel, who we will meet later in John 1 verses 45 to 51. And Thaddeus was also known as Judas, the son of James. So they had different names here. And Simon the Canaanite, let's talk about him for a second. Well, some people in some Bibles call him Simon the Zealot, and this is because he could have been a member of the Zealot, which was a radical political party working towards a violent overthrow of Roman rule in Israel. And that's who he was. As you can see, if you take these names and you write them down in a list, you will see that Mark and Luke are not included in that. So here, we're not going to get into this conversation until we get into the actual book of Mark and Luke. But I'm going to show you here from my study Bible that I did research this. And you will see here and take note of who exactly Mark is. He was not a disciple. And then there's information here about Luke. And those we will get to all of that information once we get into the book. So we're not going to spend time on that today because this is going to take time from the actual word. So let's move on. Verse number 5, these 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Jesus is basically giving orders for them to go on their mission. And this was a good thing. I mean, what a teacher does is he teaches, and then he feels prepared. He feels that you're prepared enough to go out. And we're not talking about a teacher. You could be a teacher at anything. You can be a teacher teaching surgery, how to do surgery. I mean, if your teacher doesn't feel like you were equipped, he's not going to have you do surgery, right? So obviously, Jesus felt that now they were equipped to go out and do the mission that they were called to do. This was going to be their first mission. And it's a small mission because it says here they were going to go into the way of the Gentiles in the city and the Samaritans. So this is not going to be like a big thing right now. They're just going small. They're going around to these different areas. And that's what God does. Sometimes he starts us small, you know, in little places to test us and to also give us a chance to grow in our mission, right? So, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. From this verse here where it says Gentiles go into the way of the Gentiles, here it says, on my notes say that a Gentile is anyone who is basically not a Jew. So the Samaritans, what they were a race that came as a result of intermarriage between the Jews and the Gentiles after the Old Testament captives of the book of Kings, 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 24. And the reason that Jesus wanted this was because Jesus came first to the Jews because God chose them to tell the rest of the world about him. So the Jewish people basically were going to be the disciples, and the apostles were going to teach the Jewish people to go out and spread this news about the Messiah and all of this good news, right, that was coming. And then eventually, this is when the Gentiles, they were hoping, will start coming to the churches and receive that message of salvation that was what Jesus wanted. Verse number 6, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So by this time, Jesus refers to them, continues to refer to them as Israel, because that was the covenant promises back in the day. But there really was no political entity known as Israel anymore, because they were really the lost Jewish state. But still, God saw them that way, and that's why Jesus referred to them. And you can go to Isaiah 53 verse 6 and Jeremiah 50 verse 6 for more information about that if you want to take this a little bit further, a little deeper. And as ye go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. When he's saying preach, he wants them to display the power. When they talk, he wants them to display that power of what the mission and the message is. And which is basically letting them know about the kingdom at hand, right? We're talking here about the kingdom. The Jews were expecting a Messiah that was going to come in kind of like with military force, like a military type of kingdom that was going to come in and take over from the Romans, from the Roman rule. But kind of like when David and Solomon, that kind of thing back in the glory days. But Jesus was really talking more about a spiritual kingdom and how this had to do with the hearts of his followers when they chose to follow him. This was something very different. Verse number 8, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils freely. Ye have received, freely give. So this is now what he's telling them, what they're going to be doing and the power that they're going to have when they go out in this mission. They were supposed to give freely. But you have to give freely as you have received from God, because God has given them all of these blessings, right? So they have to give generously as well of their time, their love, and their possessions. Verse number 9, provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses. Verse number 10, nor scrip from your journey, neither 2 coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves, for the workman is worthy of his meat. Jesus told them that they should allow people to care for them when it came to food and shelter in return for the spiritual services that they were providing. So Jesus told them that they should allow others to care for them. And if they provided food or shelter, that it was fine. They can receive that for their spiritual services that they were offering. This teaches us that we have to care for our pastors as well, and our missionaries and the teachers who you listen to or watch. You can read some more verses in 1 Corinthians 9 and 1 Corinthians 10:1 and 1 Timothy 5:17 for things like that if you want to know. In this part here where it says yet staves, this is actually a walking stick. In the book of Mark, in chapter 6, verse 8, it says to take a walking stick. But in Matthew and Luke, in Luke 9, chapter 9, verse 3, it says not to. But what they are assuming is you shouldn't take an extra pair of sandals or an extra walking stick or anything like that. So if you had one walking stick, it was okay. That's what it's assumed that it meant. Like you shouldn't take extra clothes or shoes or anything like that. You were supposed to be ready just for the duty. Just go out and travel, and you're not supposed to be encumbered with excess or material goods. This was the church of the day. There was no religion here. It was just men going out to preach the good news, right? That's all it was. They didn't have all of this fancy stuff. They didn't need none of that, because the work was spiritual, and it was the practical preaching of the word. And they were supposed to be praying with people and for people, but they were supposed to also be helping with the farm work when they were staying on these properties with these people. Because if they were sitting around thinking, well, I already prayed for this guy, I did this for them, and I cast out demons. I brought this one back from the dead. Well, I'm just going to sit here this afternoon. I did my work all day during the day. I'm going to sit here now, and I'm just going to enjoy it. That can be taken as a form of payment, and that's not what Jesus wanted. So they also were providing and giving help to the families when they were on these properties. If they needed fed the chickens, the goats, whatever needed to be done there, they were also supposed to be in service as well to the families, because sitting around was not going to be a form of payment. Verse number 11, and into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and there abide till you go thence. For my notes, I wrote that they were supposed to go and find someone who was worthy to stay at their house. This person had to be willing and able to receive them and their message. And this would show us that not all the people were willing to accept this message fully. So they had to go finding these people who were willing to do this for them. And some people didn't want to accept the message fully, just like there's a lot of people now who read the Bible, but they don't want to accept the Bible as a whole. They only want to accept parts of it, and it can't be like that. And you see that they were supposed to turn away from that. They were supposed to stay with the people who accepted it fully, who were willing to accept it fully, not with people who were willing only halfway. So remember, the message of the Bible is complete, and you can't accept just parts of it. You have to accept it as a whole. You can't make an apple into a pear, is what I'm trying to say. They were not supposed to charge people either for what they were doing. Their basic needs had to be met through God's provision, and this was probably something really important that Jesus wanted them to learn. And that was going to come from the hospitality of the people that they met, with sincerity, right? Verse number 12, and when ye come into a house, salute it. Verse number 13, and if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. So they were not supposed to stay in places that were not willing to take the message. And some people would not be very kind to them. So they would just leave simply. You can't control people. You can't change your minds. You just have to go on and focus on what you were there to do for the people who are willing to accept the message. Verse number 14, and whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. So for my notes, I wrote that Jesus told them to shake the dust of their feet if a city or a home didn't welcome them, because when they left these Gentile cities, devoutly religious Jews shook the dust from their feet to show separation from the Gentile practices, right? So if the disciples shook the dust off of a Jewish town from their feet, it was so that they were separate from Jews who rejected the Messiah. This was to show the people they were making a wrong choice. So if they did that for the Gentiles, and then you were coming to the Jews and you were trying to explain about the message of Jesus and you didn't accept it, you were supposed to do that because that was a symbol showing, oh, you're not accepting, just like the one that they were using for the Gentiles. Verse number 15, verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. From my notes, I wrote that the city was destroyed by fire from heaven because of their wickedness. And we read that when we were reading Genesis. Jesus says that those that reject the good news when they hear it will be worse off than those in that city who never heard it. Now, this is something important that I have often thought about, and I found it right here in the Bible, because I often said to myself, well, if I tell people about Jesus and they totally disregard it, that to me is super bad. And right here in this verse, it's telling you that. Because it's different for a person who rejects it because they didn't know it. But it's a totally different thing when you are told and you know and you're informed and you still decide not to choose Jesus. So those people are going to have a big day of judgment when that day comes. Verse number 16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Notice here that the sheep were sent out where the wolves were, right? That doesn't happen in nature. In nature, the sheep would never go where the pack of wolves are. But remember also that the sheep outnumber the pack of wolves. So that's what we have to try to take from this part here, because Jesus was sending them out. So Jesus is not telling us here that our attitude should be sheep-like, but he's telling us that we should be sensible and prudent, and we're not supposed to be gullible either. And we're not to be deceitful as well. We can't be deceitful. We have to find a balance really between wisdom and vulnerability in order to do God's work. Verse number 17, but beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. So the councils is called the civic arena, and the synagogues is considered the religious arena. So you have the civil with the councils, and then you have the religious arena with the synagogues. Verse number 18, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. From my notes, I wrote that Jesus states the great influence the gospel and its preachers were going to have. And later on, they're going to experience, these disciples, that they're going to have hardships with government and courts, but also they're going to have it with friends and family because of the spreading of the good news. So they're going to learn fast that not everybody really wants to accept this, right? Verse number 19, but when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak. So they were basically fearing their lack of skills, right? And their lack of skills in words. So these people were mostly fishermen, not very educated, and they were afraid that then when they were going to go to court or talk to these important people, that there's lack of skills in the words, that they're going to use was going to hurt their defense. But Jesus taught them to have faith that God's word will be coming to them when it was time to speak. Now, some people will tell you that they don't have to prepare and they just kind of will wing a sermon from this, but that doesn't mean that this part here, take no thought how you will speak. This has nothing to do with preaching, okay? This has nothing to do with poor preparation in teaching or in preaching God's word. Some people will twist it around, so be careful, because that's not what that's about. That is basically about what we just talked about when they, you know, when they talk to these rulers and these courts, that God will give them what have to say. All right, verse number 20. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. 21. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child. And the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. So this is persecution will come from the family. And I wrote down here in my notes, there's a lot of similarities that are happening in today's society with this because of the jab. There's a lot of family members that want you to get the jab, and we're seeing this. We're seeing this right now, this division that's taking place in our society between Christians as a result of the things that you're seeing in the world. So there's a lot of similarities when, like I said before in the beginning of this video, that there's some things, that lessons you can take from here. Verse 22, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. So Jesus here is saying that persistence does not mean that you're going to get salvation, but it is a byproduct of a devoted life for Jesus. So enduring to the end is the evidence that a person is truly committed to Jesus. So if you believe that this jab is the mark of the beast, and you are truly committed, then you are showing evidence towards that. Verse 23, but when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. So where he says this in 23, he says, but when they persecute you, when they. So Jesus is really telling them that they will not be able to complete their mission until, because of judgment that's coming upon Israel. He's already telling them that there. All right. Verse 24, the disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. 25, it is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? So this Beelzebub was another word for Satan, basically. And the Pharisees accused Jesus of using Satan's power to drive out demons. He is telling them there that if they believe that he has the power of Satan, they're also going to believe that his followers have it as well, right? So that's what he's explaining there. Verse 26, fear them not therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed. So he's telling them that truth is going to prevail, and do not hold back the work of God. And he's also telling them here, those who choose to cheat justice on earth will never be able to cheat it in eternity. And you're seeing a lot of that now. So be happy that this verse exists, because it gives you some comfort to know that there are people cheating here on earth, but they're not going to be able to cheat God in eternity. They're not going to get that far. And in Luke, it tells us that it warns the disciples that what is said in secret will also become public. So you will see that when we get to Luke. Verse 27, what I tell you in darkness, that ye speak in light, and what ye hear in the ear, that preach ye upon the housetops. 28, and fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So what they're saying here is man can kill the body, but God can kill both the body and the soul. Verse 29, are not 2 sparrows sold for farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father? So Jesus is telling us that he knows everything that happens, even to the sparrows. God knows. And he puts more value on us than those things, right? So we don't have to fear any personal threats or difficult trials, because he's going to be with us. He knows what we're going through, right? Verse number 30, but the very hairs of your hair are all numbered. 31, fear ye not, therefore ye are more valued than many sparrows. 32, whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him I will confess also before my Father which is in heaven. So this is basically, if you confess me before men, is the declaring allegiance in faith to Jesus Christ. And that's there. Verse 33, but whoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. 34, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. So let's talk about this, because this is a radical commitment to follow Jesus. Jesus' peace was not the kind that was going to gloss over differences for superficial harmony. And I wrote this in the notes because I really don't want to make a mistake with this. This is an important part here, so I want to make sure that I get it right. Because conflicts and disagreements will arise between those that choose Christ and those that don't. So peace is divided by those who reject the message. The people who are rejecting the message, they're not looking for peace, right? You see that what they're trying to do here is, it's almost like a playbook. They have the playbook. They're trying to divide Christian from Christian with this jab situation. And, some of us want to see the freedom, that we have the freedom to choose, right? And then others are totally opposed to that. Verse 35, for I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Verse 36, and a man's foe shall be they of his own household. Verse 37, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So this is where it gets difficult, because our own families are going to turn against us. Verse 38, and he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. So to publicly identify with Jesus will mean that you are going to experience opposition. And the cross means death to self. So this part here where it says, when you take it not his cross, the cross means death to self, but resurrection, life, is under God. And that's what it means to take, you're going to change. Verse number 9, he that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. So this is basically a committed life to Jesus. It could separate you from your friends and family, because his presence in your life, when you speak to others about it, is going to demand a decision from them. And not everybody wants to make that decision, or they want to even think about it. They just keep putting it off, right? So our different values, morals, goals are going to set us apart from other people. And this is not supposed to be an excuse to neglect your family, even when God is your first priority. So some people think, well, I don't want to know anything about these people. I don't want to know anything. I'm not going to take care of this old kook because no, it's still your family. Remember in the Bible, the 10 Commandments, honor your father and your mother. Even though she may be telling you to get the jab and you don't want to get the jab, that's still your mom. You still have to do your duty as a family member with your family. So try not to let those things divide you. Verse number 40, he that receiveth you receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. 41, he that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. And he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. Verse 42, and whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones a cup of cold water only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward. So what the reference to made here was usually a child. This is what Jesus was using as a model for unselfish behavior. was the use of this child, because usually a child won't return the favor. If you make a favor, they just won't return it. So it's basically a model for unselfish behavior when we give cold water to a thirsty child. The little ones also will include apostles, prophets, and righteous men, those that are targeted but the world hates. So it seems insignificant as a small gesture to give cold water to a person who will be thirsty again, but to God, these small gestures are remembered and rewarded. We're going to leave it at that for this week. I also wanted to note that a lot of people are coming here watching because they really want to get into the word and understand it. They're trusting and have faith that they're going to receive Jesus, and they're just starting this walk. But I want you to understand that your inability to appreciate God's love is also going to make you unable to love others. So you should really right now be reflecting on God loving you so that you are able to love others. And that's the first step in love. I know a lot of people talk about Jesus. Jesus loved, and that is not an easy thing to do. Trust me, it is not an easy thing to do to love those that you hate or those that persecute you, and all of those things that we're going to get to in Mark and Luke. There's going to be a lot more things coming up. But you have to focus on the ability of God, of appreciating God's love, so that you can also love others. So I take that into your heart this week, and really appreciating it, and have gratitude. If you do gratitude journal in the evenings, or you sit with God to give him thanks during the day, thank him for the love that he gives you. And I'm sure that if you look around on a daily basis, you will find those little things. God doesn't always do supernatural miracles. I mean, sometimes he will just show you his love in the smallest ways. Trust me, I know, because I found the perfect handbag this week after I've been looking forever for a crossbody bag. I mean, things like that where you just walk into a store, you're not even looking, and you're like, hello, how could you find the perfect one like this for me at that price? I mean, simple little things like that. God has a good sense of humor. I have to admit, he does. And he will surprise you in many ways with little things that they're just little blessings that he gives us, especially now with all of the turmoil that we have going on in our world. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching this video. And remember to receive God and take it one step at a time. I know some people don't want to walk with Jesus yet. They start learning about Jesus. You're starting to comprehend the whole role of Jesus. But start with God's love and his ability to love you so that you can love others. And when you get to the time to know Jesus, as you're getting to know him now, you will be able to receive him also and be able to do repentance as well with Jesus. So with that said, I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.